high-rise in capital hit by missile, 2 kids among 35 killed in overnight fighting, says Kyiv mayor. Ukraine in just 48 hours and sparked fears of a new Cold War in Europe. India is deeply disturbed by recent turn of developments in Ukraine, said India's permanent representative to the United Nations, urging that all efforts be made for the immediate cessation of violence and hostilities. He said no solution could ever be arrived at the cost of human lives. Speaking at the UNSC meeting on Ukraine, Tirumurti said India was also deeply concerned about the welfare and security of the Indian community, including a large number of Indian students in Ukraine. Contemporary global order has been built on UN Charter, international law and respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. We agreed to the Russian Federation's president's proposal. Currently, the parties are debating the location and timing of the negotiation process during these hours. The sooner negotiations begin, the better the chances of returning to normalcy, he said. Russia, as expected, vetoed a UN Security Council resolution on Friday that deplored in the strongest terms the country's aggression against Ukraine and demanded the immediate withdrawal of its troops. 11 of the Council's 15 members voted for the motion, which was co-written by the United States and Albania. China, India and the United Arab Emirates abstained. The resolution was always doomed to fail because of Moscow's veto power as a permanent members of the Council. However, the debate offered member nations an opportunity to voice condemnation of President Vladimir Putin's decision to launch a full-scale offensive against Russia's neighbor. Let me make one thing clear, U.S. Ambassador to the UN Linda Thomas-Greenfield said after the vote. Let me make one thing clear. The wording of the draft text put before the Security Council was watered down in the hours before the vote to gain more support. The word condemns was replaced by deplores, and a reference to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which allows members to take military action to restore peace, was deleted. The resolution reaffirmed the sovereignty of Ukraine and called for Russia to immediately cease its use of force against Ukraine. Ultimately, more than 70 countries co-sponsored the resolution. Make no mistake, Russia is isolated. It has no support for the invasion of Ukraine, said Britain's ambassador to the UN, Barbara Woodward. Before the vote, Thomas-Greenfield described Russia's attack as so bold, so brazen, that it threatens our international system as we know it. We have a solemn obligation to not look away. At the very minimum, we have an obligation to object, she said. We have a solemn obligation to not look away. At the very minimum, we have an obligation to object. Moscow's UN envoy, Vasily Nebenzia, denounced the resolution as anti-Russian and anti-Ukrainian. Anti-Russian and anti-Ukrainian, he said. Ukrainian Ambassador Sergei Kyiv led the council chamber in a moment of silence, asking members to pray for peace. He also told Nebenzia to pray for salvation. Pray for peace, said Kyiv, whose speech was widely applauded by members. Earlier, he had posed with the Ukrainian flag and European ambassadors under Picasso's Guernica tapestry, which hangs outside the entrance to the council chamber. Explaining his country's abstention, Chinese Ambassador Zhang Jun referenced NATO expansion, saying Russia's legitimate security aspirations should be given attention and addressed properly. After the vote, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said, soldiers need to return to their barracks. Leaders need to turn to the path of dialogue on peace, he pleaded. Russia, which currently holds the rotating Security Council presidency, will likely face another vote on a similar resolution before the wider UN General Assembly, which is formed of all 193 member countries. Moscow does not have a veto there, and the resolution could be passed by a substantial margin, although it would be non-binding. The General Assembly held a similar vote in 2014 condemning Russia's seizure of Crimea, which obtained 100 votes in support. Moscow had earlier vetoed a Security Council resolution condemning its actions in Crimea. 13 countries supported it, with China abstaining.